about the Trump era that the phrase, the same worms will eat him too, actually qualifies as a hopeful thought. I would honestly like that crocheted on a pillow so I can wake up to it every morning.
What kind of man are you? Say you're noble, but you're just a goddamn fool.
Forget mastering foreign affairs. Trump may not have mastered object permanence, which you really need to be a good president or even a good fucking baby.
Go on, yeah, go. You know, yeah, you better run, or you're staring down the barrel of my shotgun. Yeah, my shotgun.
Hello, humans. Welcome back to the Slackline Quote of the Day broadcast. You are here with the boss.
The boss is coming.
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
And we are back chatting quotes on Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. Coming at you from Vancouver, Canada. Yesterday we chatted a little bit about Emma Gonzalez and the Parkland shooting in Florida, and the bravery showed by some of those young kids that are standing up and speaking against the inaction of government officials or even negative action on the part of officials and elected officials and executive members of government. And today, and today we are talking a little bit of John Oliver, because he's back. I didn't get a chance to watch the show yesterday, but I did today, and very happy he is back in the fold. Missed him a lot. Every once in a while I'd sit and I think, like, where the fuck is John Oliver? Like, he hasn't had a show in like a year. Like, man, it seemed like it was forever, and I was worried that he got taken out somewhere along the way. As sad as it is, it wouldn't surprise me, as we talked about yesterday with assassinations and that type of thing. But that was yesterday, and today is today. And who is bringing us our quote today there, Jerry? Our quote today comes from Trump Translator. Trying to decipher what he's actually claiming is huge or great. New Trump Translator will convert his speech to some form of understandable language. Caution, actually understanding President Trump's intentions and thought process will result in immediate psychosis. That is the Trump Translator. For when you have no fucking idea what he is saying. And they are bringing us our quote today. Our quote today comes from one Mr. John Oliver from his episode on Sunday. Foreign affairs is like sex. If you loudly announce that you always come first, you're going to have trouble finding partners. That is John Oliver from the other night, his Sunday night show, talking about Trump's foreign policy. Or lack thereof, really. What they mostly talked about was the fact that he doesn't have like any foreign ambassadors, and especially in important countries, in places like Saudi Arabia and South Korea, and all these like major countries that really should have ambassadors and diplomats. And he talked about what countries are going to kind of take the place of the U.S. on the world stage, as regard for it and its ideologies, tanks, in the eyes of other global leaders. You know, who ends up filling the power vacuum, and the discussions basically centered around Germany and China, kind of forgetting Russia, actually, which I found kind of interesting, considering Putin's the cause of all of this shit, or at least partially, or he at least wanted it to happen. So, gotta be a little bit concerned about the rise of Russian influence there. Not that, like, I hate to say the rise of Russian influence, because I have no problem with Russian influence. I have a problem with Putin influence and dictatorial influence, just in general. But yeah, I mean, foreign policy is a tricky thing. A lot of times it's hard to know where our nations and leaders actually really stand, because when they're campaigning, a lot of times like people don't really care about foreign policy issues, because they don't really affect the people at home. So when it comes to election time, that's usually not a big priority unless there's like a war or something going on. And it becomes really really difficult to find what the line is, because like, how can you condemn a place for human rights violations and then sell them weapons? How can a leader come face to face with like another one who only wants to destroy them, figuratively or literally, and come to a compromise? Like, how can, after all this rhetoric and all this terrible stuff that goes on, Trump and Kim Jong-un sit down and be like, you know what, I think that we can come to an agreement, or Putin and well, not Trump. I mean, they've obviously come to an agreement, Putin and like the world, to be like, hey man, can you settle down? And like at some point he'll just be like, okay. Yeah, it's hard to know how to approach those types of situations. And like I said, people at home rarely care about foreign policy because it rarely actually affects the people at home. But that's become increasingly less so as we become globalized, as we become basically one nation, one currency, multinational businesses, all this type of stuff. Like, we are blending. Borders are becoming, obviously they're becoming more secure and more restrictive because of all the security issues worldwide. Culturally and economically, the blurs, or the lines, are blurring very, very significantly. So the foreign policy does matter. How China views your world leader is going to matter, and how the U.S. and Mexico and Canada all get along will affect the rest of the world, because we all trade goods with each other and everybody else. And what can sometimes help others can hurt others, especially in your own country, right? Like things like trade agreements and stuff. They trade is almost always positive for everybody involved. From the trade standpoint, from the standpoint of who benefits, from the benefits of the trade of setting up a business in another country and trading goods back to the consumers of another, technically makes both the consumer and the producer happy, but fails to recognize obviously the people who used to be the producer of those products, who used to work in the factories in the country that it was in before, and now who's working in the factories there, and why are they getting paid so much less, and all these types of issues that get wrapped around in foreign policy and kind of brushed under the rug. We kind of not really sure how to deal with it, because you're talking about like the law systems and the business systems and the economic systems of other nations and sovereign nations, and you can't just go in and be like, no, this is how our business runs or whatever. You have to run it their way. And so, yeah, I mean, foreign policy encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses those things, trade and just foreign relations like that. It can be viewed as harboring peace by going through peace treaties and with peacekeeping missions and foreign aid missions and those types of things, or it can be viewed as imposing idealism onto others, which it can be a mix of both of those things. And something that gets kind of missed in all this is how important of a foreign policy environmental policy is, because that is the ultimate foreign policy. That is all of our policy. I mean, we're all sharing the planet, and so that specifically of all the foreign policy issues, economic, security, and environmental, not just trees and whatnot, but our own well-being, taking care of each other and whatnot, definitely takes a very distant third seat to the other two. when really, I mean, it's really hard to argue that it's not the most important of the three, because it's, the funny thing is, it's really the only thing that's real. The economics is not real. It's money. It's our own system. It's something we made up in order to exchange things. It can be changed. It can be broken. It can be bent. And security, whether or not we're safe, is kind of an illusion, to be honest. Like, we've talked about it before. It's probably more dangerous for me to cross the road just over on the corner by my house than it is to get into an airplane, or than it is to sit in a concert in Las Vegas, or than it is to be at a school or wherever. That doesn't mean that tragedies don't happen in those places and those things are random and senseless. So, trying to measure foreign policy around security and military action, especially when our enemies are nationless, that stuff gets really messed up too. And it's not really a real concept. The idea of reacting to like terrorism and stuff like that with more security and more fear is exactly what, that whole the purpose of their methods are. And so, like, in a weird way, the best way to fight it theoretically should be to ignore it, but you can't really do that either. And again, the likelihood of getting attacked by a terrorist, for me anyways, and for a lot of people, is remote compared to daily dangers that we just don't really think about. So environmental, as far as like, rising sea levels, which can destroy cities, rising temperatures, which change habitats and food sources and those types of things, and well-being, personal well-being, our health, how we take care of people that are sick in our countries and that type of stuff, not just physically but mentally, and all those things. Those are real. Those are real physical problems. Those are problems with definite solutions too. We just have to work towards them. So, and now you have this problem where what was once, the source of stability, it has become the source of chaos, and everybody else is scrambling. Germany and Europe are scrambling to try and figure out how they can protect themselves without the reliance on the U.S. Canada and Mexico are both sitting here like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, Mexico is obviously shaking a little bit more, but Canada is also like, kind of looking down at our brother going like, bro, you gotta shut up, man. Just shut up, okay? Like, just be cool, bro. Like, take a toke and be cool, and everything will be fine. Everybody will forget. Get this idiot out of the party, bounce this clown, bring in, one of the popular kids to help calm everybody down, and let's go on our merry way together. But yeah, it's getting harder and harder to look at it like that, as days go by, and as Trump basically gives the middle finger to the rest of the world without the realization that, it's not 1940 and people are connected differently now, and you can't just isolate your country and people won't be able to touch you because all that they have to reach you are submarines and boats and shitty planes. Like, that's not how this works. People can see what we're doing all the time, everywhere, from everything, and people react to it, and people will fact check you on it, and there's no hiding from a bad deal or from porn stars in your closet or however you want to look at it. So maybe that's what maybe that's where we'll end it today. A little bit of chat on foreign policy. Thanks to the prompt from one of our generation's great voices, John Oliver. Foreign affairs is like sex. If you loudly announce that you always come first, you're going to have trouble finding partners. That again is John Oliver from his broadcast a couple days ago. And that quote again brought to us by Trump Translator, trying to decipher what he's actually claiming is great or huge. New Trump Translator will convert his speech into some form of understandable language. Caution, actually understanding President Trump's intentions and or thought process will result in immediate psychosis. That is the Trump Translator bringing us our quote today. Thanks again to Crooked Spies for providing their music as always. Some great rockin' tunes out of them. Thanks to anybody that is listening. Please make sure you're following the Slackline on Instagram at the.slack.line, on Twitter at slackline_radio, and on YouTube and iTunes at the Slackline Podcast. You have been listening to The Boss.
The boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
This has been Quote of the Day, and we will be back tomorrow. Hope everybody enjoys their Tuesday. All the best.
They block the stars at night. The stars at night. I thought one day they'd